Ancient Greece, and particularly the city of Athens, is celebrated as the birthplace of democracy, a revolutionary system that allowed citizens to participate directly in their government. Long before the concept of representative democracies, Athenians developed a form of governance where decisions were made by the people themselves, setting the foundation for political freedom and civic participation. This early experiment in democracy wasn't perfect and excluded many, but it introduced the powerful idea that citizens, rather than kings or aristocrats, could hold power. The democratic principles born in ancient Greece would inspire governments for centuries, influencing societies around the world and laying the groundwork for the modern democratic ideals we value today. Before democracy took root in ancient Greece, Greek society was primarily ruled by kings and oligarchs. Each Greek city-state, or polis, functioned as an independent political entity with its own government, military, and economy. The two most powerful types of governance were monarchy, where a king held absolute power, and oligarchy, where a small group of wealthy elites, often landowners and noble families, controlled the government. These rulers maintained tight control over resources, laws, and military decisions, leaving the average citizen with little say in public affairs. This concentration of power created a significant divide between the rich and poor. Wealthy landowners amassed large estates and fortunes, while the majority of citizens worked as farmers, artisans, or laborers, struggling to make a living. Debt was common, and for those unable to pay, the penalty could be as harsh as enslavement. This inequality fostered frustration and discontent among the lower classes, who had no voice in political decisions that affected their lives. Over time, the gap between the elite and the common people grew wider, setting the stage for calls for change. These social tensions, coupled with exposure to new ideas through trade and contact with other cultures, sparked a desire for reform. In cities like Athens, citizens began to demand a system where they could participate in decisions affecting the community. This drive to reduce the power of the elite and give citizens a say in government led to one of history's most significant political transformations, the birth of democracy. The birth of democracy in Athens wasn't a sudden event. It emerged gradually from mounting social and political pressures. By the 6th century BCE, Athens was facing serious internal challenges that threatened its stability and prosperity. Economic inequality had reached a breaking point. The rich elite, made up of noble landowners, held most of the wealth and power, while the majority of Athenians struggled to make ends meet. Small farmers were often forced into debt, and many lost their land to wealthy creditors. If they couldn't repay their debts, they risked being sold into slavery, a fate that created widespread resentment and a desire for change. At the same time, Athens was growing as a city-state with increasing trade and contact with other cultures. This exposure brought new ideas, especially about governance and fairness, sparking questions about who should hold power. Common citizens, who formed the backbone of Athens' military as hoplites and rowers, began to demand more political rights in exchange for their service. The idea that only a few elite families should decide the fate of the entire city-state was being challenged. In response to these pressures, Athens saw a series of reformers who attempted to bridge the gap between the elite and the common people. The first major reformer was Solon, a respected leader known for his wisdom. Around 594 BCE, Solon introduced sweeping reforms to reduce social conflict. He canceled debts, outlawed debt slavery, and restructured the economy to reduce wealth concentration. Solon also reorganized Athenian society, allowing all free male citizens to participate in the assembly, where they could debate and vote on public matters. However, while Solon's reforms eased some tensions, they didn't fully solve the problem. Over the next several decades, power struggles continued between the elite and the lower classes. The turning point came with Cleisthenes in 508 BCE. Often called the father of Athenian democracy, Cleisthenes introduced a radical reorganization of Athenian society, breaking the power of noble families by creating new tribes and local districts that mixed citizens from different backgrounds. His reforms established the ecclesia, or assembly, which allowed male citizens to vote directly on laws and policies. Cleisthenes' system empowered common citizens, weakened aristocratic influence, and established the foundations of Athenian democracy. These reforms didn't make Athens an inclusive society by today's standards. Only free male citizens could participate, excluding women, slaves, and foreigners. But by allowing ordinary Athenians a voice in their government, Cleisthenes set in motion a political experiment that would transform Athens and, ultimately, influence the course of history. Athenian democracy was unique in that it was a direct democracy. Unlike the representative democracies we're familiar with today, where elected officials make decisions on behalf of the people, in Athens, citizens themselves were directly involved in making laws and policies. This system gave male citizens in Athens a powerful role in governing their city-state. But it also required a highly organized and participatory political structure to function. The heart of Athenian democracy was the ecclesia, or assembly, which was open to all free male citizens over the age of 18, about 30,000 to 40,000 people. The assembly met on a hill called the Nix, where citizens gathered to debate and vote on important issues like war, foreign policy, laws, and public expenditures. Any citizen could speak and propose new laws, and every citizen's vote counted equally. Decisions were often made by a show of hands, making the assembly a true forum for direct participation. To manage the day-to-day operations of the government, Athens also had the Boule, or Council of 500. The Boule was responsible for setting the agenda for the assembly and preparing the topics that would be discussed. Members of the Boule were chosen by a lottery system from a pool of citizens, with 50 representatives from each of the 10 tribes of Athens. This system of random selection was designed to prevent corruption and ensure a broad representation of citizens. Members served for 1 year and were compensated for their time, allowing even poorer citizens to participate in governance without financial hardship. Another unique aspect of Athenian democracy was the practice of ostracism. Each year, the assembly held a vote to decide whether any citizen posed a potential threat to the state. If a majority voted for ostracism, they would scratch the name of the citizen they feared most onto a piece of pottery, called an ostracon. If any one person's name appeared frequently enough, that individual would be exiled from Athens for 10 years. Ostracism was seen as a way to protect the city-state from the rise of potential tyrants or overly ambitious individuals who might threaten democratic stability. Judicial matters were also handled by citizens. Large juries, sometimes numbering hundreds of citizens, were selected by lottery to hear court cases. This jury system was another way of ensuring that ordinary citizens played an active role in the justice system, rather than leaving it solely to elite judges. While this direct democracy was groundbreaking, it also required a significant commitment from its citizens. Public life in Athens was highly participatory, and civic duty was seen as a fundamental part of being a citizen. However, it's important to note that only free adult males born to Athenian parents were allowed to participate in this democracy, excluding women, slaves, and non-citizens. Despite these limitations, Athenian democracy remains a fascinating example of direct civic involvement, where citizens held real power and took an active role in shaping their society. Through this system, Athenians experimented with the idea of shared governance, laying the foundation for democratic principles and inspiring future generations to envision a government by the people and for the people. While Athenian democracy was groundbreaking, it had major limitations that would be unimaginable in today's democratic societies. Participation in the democratic process was restricted to a select group. Only free male citizens over the age of 18, born to Athenian parents, could vote and hold office. This excluded a large portion of Athens' population, including women, slaves, and medics, or foreign residents, who together made up nearly 90% of the city-state. These groups had no political rights or voice in the government, despite their significant contributions to Athenian society. Women, for example, were vital to the household and managed family affairs, but they were excluded from the public sphere entirely. Slaves, who handled much of the manual labor, allowed free citizens the time to participate in politics, yet they had no rights themselves. Foreign residents, or medics, often played essential roles in trade, commerce, and craftsmanship, contributing to Athens' economy and cultural vibrancy, yet they, too, were barred from the democratic process. Moreover, Athenian democracy relied heavily on the active, frequent participation of citizens. While this was revolutionary, it wasn't practical for everyone, particularly those who couldn't afford to spend days in the assembly or on juries. Although officials received small payments, poorer citizens often found it challenging to balance civic duty with their livelihoods. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle were also critical of Athenian democracy, expressing concerns about its susceptibility to mob rule and manipulation. They worried that decisions made by the masses could be swayed by emotions rather than reasoned judgment, potentially leading to instability or poor choices in leadership. Despite these significant limitations, Athenian democracy was a radical experiment in shared governance. It laid the foundations for democratic ideals, while demonstrating both the potential and challenges of giving power to the people. Its impact on political thought endures, but it also serves as a reminder of the ongoing struggle to create a truly inclusive democracy. Athens' democratic system proved surprisingly resilient and adaptable, even in times of crisis. A powerful example of this adaptability occurred during the Persian Wars in the early 5th century BCE. When Persia, the largest empire of the time, threatened to invade Greece, Athens and other Greek city-states faced an unprecedented challenge that required swift, united action. Athens' leaders turned to the assembly for key decisions, allowing citizens to vote on crucial wartime strategies. This engagement empowered citizens to feel directly invested in the city's defense, strengthening their resolve to fight against the powerful Persian Empire. Led by Themistocles, a brilliant Athenian general and politician, Athens adopted innovative strategies based on the assembly's approval, including the creation of a powerful navy that would play a pivotal role in their victory. One of the most defining moments of this conflict was the Battle of Salamis. After the Persians sacked and burned Athens, Themistocles proposed a bold plan to lure the Persian fleet into the narrow straits near the island of Salamis. This risky strategy was debated and approved by the assembly, showing how democracy could quickly mobilize resources and support in a crisis. The result was a decisive Greek victory, as the Athenian navy's maneuverability in the narrow straits turned the tide against the larger Persian fleet. Athens emerged from the Persian Wars stronger and more unified, with citizens feeling a deep sense of pride and ownership in their city's triumph. This experience demonstrated the strength of Athens' democratic system and fostered a new confidence in the power of the people. In the aftermath, Athens entered a golden age under Pericles, who promoted the idea that democracy was worth defending and expanding. This resilience in the face of crisis showed that democracy wasn't just a luxury for peaceful times. It could also be a powerful force in uniting and empowering citizens when facing existential threats. Athens' democratic system, though limited in scope and inclusion, planted the seeds for democratic governance that would inspire societies for centuries. By giving ordinary citizens a voice in political decision-making, Athens introduced the revolutionary idea that government should be accountable to the people it serves. This concept laid the groundwork for future generations to expand on and refine democratic principles. One of the first civilizations to adopt aspects of Athenian democracy was Rome, which established a republic with elected officials and a senate. Although not a direct democracy like Athens, Rome's system incorporated elements of citizen participation and legislative debate that echoed Athenian ideals, allowing citizens, though mainly the wealthy, to have a say in governance. This model influenced political thought across the Western world. Centuries later, Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke, Montesquieu, and Rousseau studied Athenian democracy, drawing inspiration from its core ideas of civic involvement, liberty, and accountability. Locke's concept of government by the consent of the governed, for example, directly reflected Athenian values, though he advocated for more inclusive systems. These Enlightenment ideas would later play a crucial role in shaping the democratic revolutions of the 18th century. In the United States, the Founding Fathers looked to Athens as they crafted a new form of government. They combined Athenian ideals of citizen participation with Roman republicanism to create a system that emphasized checks and balances and the rule of law. While they ultimately opted for a representative democracy, Elements of Athens' assembly and council structures are echoed in the U.S. Congress and state legislatures. Today, Athens' democratic legacy lives on in modern democracies around the world, reminding us of the importance of active citizenship, transparency, and accountability. Though Athens' democracy had its flaws, its fundamental principles continue to inspire countries to strive for fair governance that reflects the will of the people. Understanding the origins of democracy in Athens helps us appreciate the power and resilience of ideas that place citizens at the heart of governance. Athens introduced revolutionary concepts of civic participation, accountability, and collective decision-making, laying the foundation for democratic values that we still hold dear. Although Athenian democracy was limited and imperfect, it sparked a global journey toward more inclusive and representative governments. Today, the ideals born in ancient Athens remind us of our responsibilities as active citizens and the value of each individual's voice in shaping society. Reflecting on Athens' legacy encourages us to protect and refine our own democratic systems, ensuring that the pursuit of liberty, equality, and justice continues to evolve. If you found this video inspiring, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts on how democracy continues to impact our lives today.